Here's why the US's integrated kill chain is superior. It doesn't wait for a formal declaration of war. It begins 200 feet beneath the surface of the Earth before a single Iranian radar operator even realizes his screen has been hijacked. 0103 Not in Syria, Iran. Deep inside the unstrikable centrifuge halls, a 30,000-pound slab of hardened steel moving at nearly 800 miles per hour had just transitioned from the night sky into the mountain's granite crust. This is the GBU-57 Alpha Bravo Massive Ordnance Penetrator. Dropped from a B-21 Raider loitering at 55,000 feet, the GBU-57A/BMO is a $3.5 million message from the U.S. Air Force. It didn't explode on contact. It used its kinetic energy to burrow through 200 feet of reinforced concrete and rock. Only then did the delayed fused warhead detonate. The result was a localized earthquake that turned Iran's primary nuclear enrichment capability into a tomb of jagged stone and pulverized silicon. While the dust settled in Natanz, the out-of-this-world part of the mission began. The B-21 didn't just fly away. It stayed. Using its massive active electronically scanned array radar, it began a process called digital mapping and erasure. Within 6 minutes of the strike, the B-21 had identified every active IRGC surface-to-air missile site within a 200-mile radius and shared those coordinates via a hardened satellite link directly to the cockpit of 4 F-35C Lightning IIs orbiting the Persian Gulf. The U.S. Air Force didn't just hit a target. They dismantled an entire nation's defensive posture in the time it takes to brew a pot of coffee. 2:15 a.m. The Iranian response is immediate and fueled by desperation. They cannot hit the B-21s they can't see. So, they lash out at the most visible symbol of American power in the region, the USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group. Declaring the strike an act of international piracy, the IRGC Navy orders Operation Great Prophet's Fury. They are sending a Wolfpack's swarm. 65 fast attack craft, including the high-speed Zulfigar class, scream out of the coastal caves of Bandar Abbas. They are moving at over 55 miles per hour, weaving in a chaotic nonlinear pattern to confuse the Ford's targeting computers. Multiple inbound track Surfacitos surface missiles launched from the coast. The TAO in the Ford's Combat Information Center shouts, the Iranians launch a saturation volley. 40 Nor anti-ship cruise missiles. The Iranian version of the C-802 erupt from mobile launchers hidden in the hills. These missiles are sea skimmers hugging the waves at just 15 feet above the water, moving at 650 miles per hour. This is the pretext intercept. The IRGC command knows they will lose ships, but they only need one to impact the Ford's flight deck and to claim a strategic victory. They approached the carrier group with a reckless disregard for life, cutting across the bows of the escorting destroyers, forcing the U.S. ships into a defensive posture that limits their ability to maneuver. For the first time in modern history, the U.S. Navy feels the pressure. The Iranian tactic is brilliant in its brutality. They use a leapfrog strategy. While the fast boats draw the carrier guns, they deploy a new specialized electronic warfare drone, the Cyborg EDW. Suddenly, the Ford's primary defense, the cooperative engagement capability, begins to flicker. The IRGC has managed to find a harmonic hole in the ship sensor handoff. For a terrifying 120 seconds, the USS Gerald R. Ford is partially blind. The destroyers can see the missiles, but the data they are sending to the carrier is being corrupted by the cyborg drones. Targeting Lost Spy 6 radar is showing ghost contacts in the CIC. The red glow of the battle lamps reflects off the sweat on the TAO's forehead. He has 14 Nor missiles closing in. Distance 15 miles. Time to impact 82 seconds. The Ford has to rely on its point defense. The RIM 162 evolved Sea Sparrow missile launchers hum to life. These 1.8 million interceptors are the ship's shield. They launch in a terrifying ripple 4 missiles every 2 seconds. The ESSM can perform 50G turns, and as they leave the cells, they illuminate the night sky, seeking the heat signatures of the inbound Iranian cruise missiles. 12 of the Nor missiles are intercepted in spectacular mid-air collisions. But the IRGC isn't done. While the Ford's crew focuses on the missiles, the Wolfpack boats have reached the kill zone. 2:40 a.m. As the Ford executes a violent hard starboard turn to bring its starboard phalanx C9WS guns to bear on a closing fast boat, the sonar operator screams, "Mine contact, multiple smart mines active, bearing 180, depth 30 feet. The Iranians didn't just approach the Ford. They used the Wolfpack boats as a screen to deploy SATF-02 acoustic moored smart mines directly into the carrier's projected path. These aren't the floating balls of iron from World War II. The SATF is a microprocessor-controlled weapon. It doesn't need to be touched. It listens for the specific cavitation signature of the Ford's 4 massive bronze propellers. The Ford is boxed in. If it continues the turn, it hits the mines. If it stops, it becomes a stationary target for the remaining Iranian fast boats armed with NAS-1 anti-ship missiles. The IRGC commander on the shore smiles. He believes he has achieved the impossible, the checkmate of a U.S. supercarrier. But the smile doesn't last. The U.S. Air Force B-21 Raider, still loitering miles above, has been listening to the IRGC's internal radio frequency triggers for the mines. This is where the U.S. military does something that seems like science fiction. The B-21 is a high-altitude cyber warfare hub. It identifies the digital handshake between the Iranian Shore Command and the smart mines. In less than 15 milliseconds, the B-21's mission computer hacks the encrypted Iranian network. It doesn't disable the mines. It reprograms them. TSR is reporting. The mines are detaching from their moorings. They're moving. Using a forged acoustic command sent via a localized sonar pulse from a nearby U.S. Navy Snakehead UUV, the U.S. military tells the Iranian mines that the target has shifted. The mines, which the Iranians thought were their ultimate trap, suddenly target the IRGC fast attack boats closing in for the kill. The water around the Iranian Wolfpack erupts. 6 underwater detonations, each equivalent to 500 pounds of TNT, vaporize the lead Iranian interceptors. The shock waves are so massive that the fiberglass hulls of the surrounding boats shatter instantly. The impenetrable minefield has just turned into a self-inflicted massacre for the IRGC. With the mine threat neutralized and the jamming source identified by the B-21, the USS Gerald R. Ford regains its God's eye view. The TAO doesn't hesitate. Clear the decks. Open the BLS cells. All batteries weapons free. The escorting Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. The USS Winston S. Churchill lets out a roar that can be heard for miles. It launches a volley of RIM-174 Standard Missile 6 interceptors. The SM-6 is a $4.3 million masterpiece of destruction. It doesn't just fly toward a coordinate. It uses its own active radar seeker to hunt targets. The SM-6 missiles streak across the Gulf at 2,600 miles per hour. They don't just target the boats. They target the coastal launchers that fired the new missiles. Simultaneously, 2 F/A-18E Super Hornets receiving target data directly from the B-21 Raider released the AGM-158 CLR-ASM. This is a stealthy, autonomous, smart missile. It doesn't need a pilot to guide it. The LRM uses artificial intelligence to sniff the electronic signature of the Iranian command boats. It ignores the decoys, ignores the burning wreckage, and picks the exact center of the IRGC command structure. For LRM impacts, for command boats gone. To ensure the pretext is permanently ended, the Churchill launches a final volley of BGM-109 Tomahawk land attack missiles. These $2 million missiles cruise at 550 miles per hour, hugging the terrain of the Iranian coastline, following the valleys and ridges to avoid the remaining Iranian radar. Their target, the coastal bunkers where the wolf pack was staged. The bunkers disappear in a series of precision-guided fireballs. 3:12 a.m. The surface of the Persian Gulf is a graveyard of burning fiberglass, but the seabed is suddenly screaming. The IRGC knew their network would be the first thing to fall, so they built a sleeper cell into the ocean floor, a purely mechanical backup that the U.S. Air Force couldn't hack because it wasn't connected to anything. This is the twist the Fifth Fleet didn't see coming. The dead man's trigger. Sonar alert high-speed subsurface transients bearing 045 speed 230 miles per hour. The sensor tech on the Ford yells, his voice cracking for the first time. These are Iranian Hoot super-cavitating torpedoes launched from pre-positioned submerged capsules triggered by the thermal bloom of the Ford's own escort fire. Because they travel inside a bubble of air, they are essentially underwater missiles. At 230 miles per hour, the Ford has exactly 42 seconds before its hull is compromised. Evasive maneuvers launch the countermeasures. The USS Winston-Sill reacts in milliseconds. It launches the RU-139 VLA. The RU-139 VLA streaks into the sky carrying a Mark 54 torpedo. It flies 3 miles out, drops into the water, and activates its own sonar to intercept the Hoot. The explosion is massive, sending a 100-foot geyser of white water into the air, but 2 more Hoots are still closing. While the Churchill fights the subsurface threat, the Iranian coast let out one final desperate gasp. A hidden sleeper battery of Kageh Farza's anti-ship ballistic missile specifically designed to hit moving carriers erupts from a camouflaged cave the B-21 had missed. These missiles arc into the upper atmosphere, traveling at Mach 3. The Ford's crew is now fighting a three-dimensional war. To counter the college FARS, the ship Ripple fires the RIM-16 rolling airframe missile for close-in defense while simultaneously launching more RIM-174 Standard Missile 6 interceptors to hit the ballistic threats in their terminal phase. The SM-6 missiles find the college FARS above the carrier. The shock waves rattling the Ford superstructure. Below the waterline, the Churchill's final counter-torpedo detonates, stopping the last HO just 400 yards from the carrier's hull. The Iranians were a cornered predator with a mechanical bite. But the U.S. machine didn't break. It just worked harder. The terminal surge was met with the absolute limit of American technology. And for the IRGC, there are no more triggers left to pull. 4:30 a.m. The Persian Gulf is silent, save for the sound of the Ford's catapults launching patrol jets into the dawn. The wolf pack is gone. The mines are neutralized. The unstrikable bunkers are rubble. The strategic fallout for Throne is a generational catastrophe. In a single morning, decades of investment in anti-access/area denial or a 2/ doctrine have been dismantled. The unstrikable Natanz facility, buried under hundreds of feet of granite, is now a subterranean graveyard for the centrifuges that represented Iran's primary geopolitical leverage. All thanks to the terrifying kinetic penetration of the GBU-57A-B massive ordnance penetrator. The economic math of the engagement reveals a staggering disparity that Moscow and Beijing are surely analyzing right now. Thran lost nearly $1.22 billion in high-end naval assets, 3 command centers, and over 15% of its total cruise missile inventory. The U.S. Navy and Air Force, by contrast, expended roughly $190 million in precision munitions, a high price for a single morning, but a rounding error in the context of the trillions in global trade protected by keeping the strait open. Why did the U.S. Navy and Air Force win this engagement so decisively? It wasn't because they had the biggest ship or the most missiles. They won because they owned the speed of information. In modern warfare, the God's eye view is the only asset that matters. While the IRGC commanders were waiting for verbal orders over jammed radios, the B-21 Raider and the Ford's integrated sensor suite had already processed the battlefield and executed a digital hijack. The U.S. didn't just fire back. They reconfigured the enemy's own weapons into instruments of self-destruction. For the Iranians, this was a catastrophe born of an archaic understanding of power. They thought the Ford was a legacy target, a massive iron fortress tied to the rules of 20th-century warfare. They didn't realize they were fighting a system of systems. They saw a carrier. The US saw a node in a global network. The bunkers were rubble. The wolf pack was gone. And the BGM-109 Tomahawk missiles had already completed their long-range cleansing of the IRGC naval docks. To the rest of the world, this was a display of power that defied belief. To the men and women of the Fifth Fleet, it was simply another Tuesday morning in the Gulf. What part of this kill web integration shocked you the most? Was it the B-21 Raider's ability to hack a minefield from 10 miles up, or the sheer destructive power of the GBU-57 hitting a mountain base? Let us know in the comments below. We read your tactical analyses to see who really understands the future of warfare. If you want to stay updated on the technology that defines global dominance and see more deep dives into the systems of the US Fifth Fleet and Air Force, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We bring you the tech, the tactics, and the truth.